Hey folks, Nerdarchist Dave here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and I'm hanging out with.
Nerdarchist Ted.
And in theory, we are live on the interwebs.
We'll see whether it works out because I got nothing going on here.
It's all good. I think we're good. There's always a delay. So, welcome everyone. I'm so happy to have you guys here spending your Saturday afternoon with us, or morning, depending where you are. Could even be evening, I guess.
Absolutely.
All depends where in the world you are. And yep, now I hear myself. God, I hate that sound.
And you get the extra gravelly today.
Yeah. Since Christmas Day, I've had a cold, and Ted he's been sick with his own issues. So, but we're hanging in there. We're gonna make it through. We will persevere. If the videos we shot this week seem to be a little lackluster with the oomph, that would be why.
Well, I've got more energy, than I did last week. I'm not, not collapsing on the floor, but I mean, I literally did, do a half-hour power nap before you got here to film. So hopefully that helps.
I just rolled out of bed into my shoes and came here pretty much to get the show on the road.
So we're talking about first-time DMing today, huh?
Yes, that is the topic. I feel like I saw a tweet or something, and people were talking about DMing for the first time and asking for advice and tips and tricks and that kind of thing. So I was like, that would probably be a good topic. And folks in the chat, feel free to weigh in and jump in there and help us out with your tips and your tricks as well.
Or if you have any questions, or if any misgivings about running for the first time, you can always throw those kind of things in the chat as well. Just put question or Nerdarchy, in there so that we know to kind of look out for those.
Yeah, questions really help because we're so far removed from running our first game that sometimes this stuff that we kind of take for granted gets a little more difficult.
So, I look at running for a new group as a little bit of, running for the first time. And that's the nearest I have, because I mean, I've been running since, second edition was out. But when a new person comes to your table, it's like, oh, well, how is my style going to mesh with their style? What are they looking for? So there's always going to be, those questions that I have, those misgivings, if you will. Even as a veteran GM, I still question, all right, you happy with what happened? Do you like my style? It's just amusing.
Well, there's a couple things. One, I just want to give a hand to anyone that jumps to the other side of the screen for the first time and gets in there and does it. You're awesome. And two, almost every single GM I've ever spoken to, no matter how long they've been GMing, a large percentage of them still get nervous before the game starts. And then you start and you get into the game and you play the game and you're having fun.
Absolutely.
And it kind of progresses from there. So if you're nervous about DMing, that's okay, because the GM that's running the game for you, who maybe even got you into the game, they're probably nervous too. And they have, we all have a certain level of anxiety, because in essence, as the GM, you're performing for all these people, and you start thinking about, well, if they have a bad time, it's my fault, and I have this responsibility, and
it's the expectations.
Yes.
And there's times that oh, well, what if the material I prepared, they don't buy any of the hooks? What if I throw out this thing that I just absolutely love, and they're like, yeah, I'm not buying that. What if all of the work that you've done doesn't pan out the way that you think it will, or you think it should? And the real answer to that is take a deep breath and have fun. In the end, every single role-playing game that's out there, regardless of mechanics, regardless of how many people are involved, all you're doing is playing make-believe with rules. You're playing a game that is designed for everyone to have fun. And that should really be the center point, the focus of your get-together. And if you can get beyond all the extra stuff and have fun, everything else will just fall into place.
I think it's Sorry, guys. I want to point out Nate the Nerdarch is in the chat.
Whoa!
Yeah. Hey, stranger. We also have a question from Skull Dixon. Question for Nerdarchy: how much should you know about the rules before you begin running a game? You know, you should have a relatively kind of good knowledge of the rules. But here's the thing: if you have other players at the table that are more experienced than you, lean on them. You know, I would think like if you're DMing your first game, I think the other players probably know about it unless you're like trying to keep it a secret. Like don't let these guys find me out, you know. But no, you like be open, tell them, and if you know that certain people at the table are more knowledgeable than you, lean on them for rules. Be like, hey, can you help me out with rules calling during the game when I ask you?
Yeah,
you know,
that's the important part. When I ask, because it's like, oh, okay, well, this is what I'm gonna do. Oh, but it actually says on page 72.
Yeah, you don't want to give that job to the overbearing person at the table, for sure. But no, so like get in there and get started. You'll figure it out. You know, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is way more about rulings than it is rules anyway. You know, and that's how the earlier editions were as well, 1st and 2nd. 3rd edition went more into being more about rules than rulings. And now we're back to, you know, we kind of come full circle.
Absolutely. You know, so when it comes to it, you know, I know there are people who are not looking to step away from D&D, but there are games that are more rules light and easier to manage than D&D if you want to run a game for the first time. You know, I highly recommend, you know, from Monty Cook back here behind us, you know, No Thank You Evil, Cypher System, Strange, Numenera. You know, these are games that you don't touch dice if you're the GM. You set a difficulty and allow the players to interact with it. And once you've set it, it's it. You know, they roll and they're successful or they're not. It's fantastic for running games in, and it gives you as the GM a lot more freedom to just put things out there and see how the players interact. If you want to look at Fate, it's a little bit more, you know, simplistic in the options. There's not as much rules. You do have to, you know, adjudicate more kind of things, but it's easier and less things to absorb than everything that's within D&D.
That being said, I think the first game you GM for should be the game you've been playing, because you're going to know the most about the rules and kind of the flow of the game, so you'll have a better foundation. Now, I mean, and also sometimes games with a little bit more mechanics and rules in some ways are easier to run because, you know, you don't have to worry about abdicating quite as much.
Right.
Like if you have to, so one of the things about, you know, GMing and DMing that we talk about a lot of time is we don't actually do a lot of prep and we don't actually, you know, write up a lot of material. But what the advice I give to someone who is brand new is the opposite. You want to write stuff. You want to have prepared material. You want to have things to fall back onto. So it kind of like sets guidelines for you. It kind of keeps you, the DM, on rails. Not necessarily the players, but the DM, because you need that extra guidance, especially in the beginning when maybe you don't have as much confidence and you're not quite sure what to do. Pre-planned, pre-written adventures would be also a good way to go. Because if nothing else, it shows you and gives you an idea of how an adventure can be laid out. So it gives you a path to kind of follow as the GM. And hopefully you have forgiving players that accept that you're a new GM and they're going to kind of run along with what you present them for the evening. Now, as you get better and more experienced, then it's a lot easier for you to go to improv your GMing, and when your players go off the rails, it becomes a lot easier to kind of deal with it and advocate on the fly. But that being said, like, we live in the golden age of RPGs right now. There is so much content. I mean, you're watching RPG content right now, you know. But then there's so many DMs out there that are running games that you can watch, and you don't have to worry about being as good as them. But what you can do is you can pick up things that you like that they do, as well as things you don't like that they do. It just gives you more exposure to different styles of GMing.
And that's you know, an important thing to know as a GM, as a player. What kind of things are you looking for? If you're looking for a, cutthroat survivalist game where death is going to happen, you best make sure that everybody at the table is, really on board with that. Whereas, if you're interested in a more story driven, maybe a little bit of plot armor involved, and everybody's going to have a happy hunky dory time as you tell this story together, well, that's a completely different game. So make sure everybody's on board, and make sure everybody is interested in the same game, because that's incredibly important from moment one. We did have a question from Brady Martin. Says, how can you help me go over how to keep the players engaged in the story instead of going off and doing whatever? Now, this is something that we've, kind of answered here and there. And it begs the question of, why are they doing whatever instead of interacting with the story that you've prepared? Is it something that those characters are just not interested in? Or is it something that the players are just that kind of player that they aren't really interested in the story? They want to do whatever it is that they want to do.
That pretty much sums it up. Sometimes, like, with something like that, you should just ask them, like, is the stuff I'm presenting you not interesting to you? Is it stuff you don't want to do? And maybe you need to shift gears, change tactics, figure out what it is they do want to do, and start incorporating that into the game. Sometimes, too, players don't know, right? Like, I've been in games where I'm like, I have no idea what this DM wants from us, where we're going, and what we're supposed to be doing. But to them, it seems obvious, painfully obvious, and they don't understand.
We all have moments where, like, we get out of sorts, where we, forget, or, we're not at our peak, role-playing or peak mechanical options. Like, I know in the One Saver Dice game, my character's supposed to be the rogue, I'm supposed to be the one handling the traps, and I encountered a trap, and I'm like, I'm at a loss for what I should be doing here. And one of the other players, stuck their hand in and solved the trap. And I felt like an idiot. I'm like, yeah, that should have been an obvious, thing for me to do. But I didn't think about it. I just was like, all right, well, now what? So you do have to, have those conversations. You do have to try to see what the players are gonna want to do. And I've said this time and time again on the channel. So what do you do, or what do you do next? You don't want to do this over and over again, because it gets droll and it puts too much on the players if they're not initiative driven. But if you literally ask them in or out of game, what they want to do, they're usually going to tell you, and that's where you lead the story.
And also, if you want to engage them with their story, or keep them engaged with the story, I would say engage them with your story, right? It's one thing to ask them what they want to do, what they're going to do, but it's another when an NPC little girl runs up to one of the characters in the group and starts tugging on their tunic and asking them questions, or I need help, or something like that, where you directly engage a specific player. And, you want to switch up the focus from time to time with elements from the story, and hopefully that will pull them back.
Absolutely. Tying things together, to specific characters' backgrounds, if they've, provided such, or backstory, I should say, not background, or, things that have been left open-ended for you to kind of attach and play with. Is something happened with a loved one, a family member, a friend, some close relative that, is going on. I know in one of the Critical Role episodes, they think they're having some kind of downtime, and some gnomish, family shows up, and all they're trying to do is get one over on the rich adventurers. And it's like, oh, we're gonna, just try to, we need to undo this curse, and it's gonna cost 1,000, gold piece diamond for me to perform this ceremony, and, I know you guys have blah blah blah. And it was all a ruse. They used some minor gnomish magic to, make some things happen, and he totally did a, sleight of hand to pocket the gem as it magically disappeared. It was cute, it was comical, and it was like the kind of adventure that would normally be reserved for lower levels. So it was even more comical to have it in like the upper echelon tier of, 14th to 18th level kind of characters.
So one of the things that I want to say, just to kind of like stay on target a little bit here, is if you're thinking about GMing or you've thought about it, the biggest piece of advice I could give any want to be GM is just start. Just do it, right? Just get in there. It's very rewarding. The game needs GMs. The GM is the most important piece to this puzzle, because I've seen people on the internet that have kind of like, they've attacked that position of the GM being the most important, and like, we're all players are important. You can't play the game without players. That is true, because if you're a GM that puts people off, oftentimes you won't have players to play with. But that being said, I have yet to meet the GM that is like, oh, I just don't have any players to play the game, or it's always, the GM is like, oh, I never get to play. I'm always the GM. So you folks that are GMing and taking up the mantle, congrats. Thank you. Beholder Gaming super chat. Love you guys. Thank you, Beholder Gaming.
Thank you so much.
You're awesome, Ellie. And so the thing is, like, if a couple people leave your table, if they're players, you can still play the game. If the GM leaves, someone else has to now be the GM to continue and play. So the hobby needs you guys and gals who want to be GMs to start out and just get in there and do it. So like a couple things, like we said, use pre-written adventures, pre-plan a lot of stuff, and later on, you can start doing more improv stuff, unless you feel comfortable with it, winging it. Some people just are naturals and can do it. There are tons of videos here on Nerdarchy, WebDM, Taking 20, Matt Colville. There are so many channels out there, Dungeon Dudes. So many people are putting out D&D content and GM content that you are never going to probably not be able to find a topic that you're looking for. Now, I know in the comments that someone had asked a question about a specific piece of content, and I know we've done it.
The 1-5 arc of fighting a giant Obelix?
No. It was DSJ, a bunch of letters basically is it
DSDJKK?
Yes.
Where is it?
And he asked about a druid BBEG, and we totally did a video on an antagonist that was like a champion of neutrality.
Yes, I spent all night looking for a video on YouTube about a BBEG druid. They don't exist. Can you guys make one? Thanks. So the idea of a druid as your...
We don't even have to go into it. We did that video. It's in our catalog. It's probably it's probably titled something like True Neutral Villain or Antagonist or something like that. If you do a channel search, it'll probably pop up. So like I said, there's hardly ever a topic. Like Taking 20, I was talking to Cody the other day. He's like, I got an idea for a video. I don't think you guys have done it before. I'm like, I doubt it. And he's like, I do. It's charisma checks are backwards. I'm like, Ted and Ryan almost fist fought on a video over that topic. at least once, if not more. So, I mean, there's just so much great content out there. So many GMs to watch. Figure out what style you want to emulate until you find your own feet and have your own.
Absolutely. I'll double down on what Dave was saying about just, get out there and start. There is plenty of, pre-printed material, again, as Dave said, in the 5th edition, genre, but I mean, there's also plenty of free adventures that, are for whatever game, adapt to anything that you just get in there and go, You can take lore from other editions, other systems. Oh, insert city, here's all the information. None of that stuff needs to be mechanically attached to 5th edition. It's names and places. Use whatever you have to do. You know, take as many notes as you feel comfortable with, you know, during, before, and after the game, so that you can, you know, be in this role. You know, ask your players, you know, specifically what they're looking for, so that, you know, you can tailor the adventure so that everybody has a great time from the get-go. You know, we did a video on how important a session 0 is. Highly recommend you checking that out, because that forms all of the awesome building blocks for GMs of any level, whether you're a, you know, veteran of decades or whether it's your first time. Those questions that are going to be asked during that session 0, you know, really are going to be super important.
Well, yeah, that also kind of lends to, as a GM, like you said, it doesn't matter what your experience level is. It gives you an idea, if you do that session 0, of what the expectations of the players are, what kind of game they want, and then when you're preparing your material, you can use your notes from your session 0, hopefully, to create the adventure that you want to, you know, that you want to run for these players. Also, you know, in session 0, you can set expectations, like, this is the kind of game I'm running, so you know, the players can match up characters to that concept, or they can kind of tell you what kind of game they'd like to play in, and see if that's something the kind of game you actually want to run. You know, usually in session 0, like, it's good to have like a couple ideas, maybe 2 or 3 ideas where you pitch them, and be like, are any of you feeling these ideas? There was a question. Chat keeps jumping on me when I look down. So the gist of it was like, Delkin was the name, something along those lines. But the gist of the question was, they had a falling out in their group, and they kind of want to keep playing the same game, but the DM that was originally running the game won't be running that game anymore. Is it okay for someone else to step in and run that campaign?
You know, if the group is all for it, then absolutely. You know, if the GM's not coming back for whatever reason, and, you know, you want to just continue that story, and one of the players or somebody else is joining the group to GM, go for it. You know, it is your table. No one can tell you, you know, how to do it right or how to do it wrong.
Yeah, you know, like, one of the really odd things to me is how precious people, like, make the game, right? And to, like, we just really aren't that way. So I think when we do videos, sometimes we come off the wrong way, and people get angry because they're just so, like, into it. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's just a game we enjoy with our friends. It's a big part of our life, and we love the hobby. But to me, the people at the table are always more important than the game itself.
Right. I mean, there is always going to be the social aspect of, you know, what gaming is. And, you know, at the bare bones of it, it's a bunch of friends who, you know, have mutual and common interests together to have a good time. Whether you're playing a tabletop role-playing game, whether you're playing board games, or whether you're going to just, you know, sit and have conversations. The idea is to, you know, elevate everyone's, you know, mood, have a good time, lower their stress levels because you're having fun.
So, like, the biggest thing, like, the point I was kind of getting around to is that it's your game. So you running the game as the DM, and the players at the table. It's your game, that group, right? You don't need any permission from anybody to do anything in that game, as long as you all have an agreement that this is the game you're playing and you all are having fun. You don't have to ask me permission to use me as an NPC. I would never know. And we've gotten questions like that. You don't need Jeremy Crawford to tell you it's okay to do a certain thing in your game. It doesn't matter. How would they even know anyway? Like, if you're having fun, then you're playing the game right. If everyone at your table agrees with certain changes that you've made to the game, or they want to make to the game, then you're doing it right. It's fine. Like, all of that stuff that happens at your table, you should be taking the game and making it your own anyway. It doesn't matter how other people play. It just matters how in these microcosms, how they interact and how they work and how they enjoy it.
You know, if you have it written down of, you know, what is your house rules, so that there's no questions, you know, so that people aren't, you know, thrown for a loop. of like, oh, you know, why can't, you know, Dragonborns have a breath weapon as a bonus action, you know, considering that, you know, after a certain point, the damage it does is just pathetic in comparison to anything else anyone can do. You know, oh, potion should also be a bonus action to drink because it's just bloop. You know, write them down, make sure everybody is aware, and you know, it makes it a lot easier. And when it's written down, there's no, oh, what I didn't know. Sure you did. It's right here, pages sitting right in front of you.
Here's one for you, Ted.
Sure.
So, Michelle, I'm DMing an adventure for the first time next week, and I'm homebrewing it. I got a player who's multiclassing and everything. Will likely end up venomized as with an Infinity Stone advice.
Oh my word!
So you're dropping in artifacts in the game right away.
Well, he says he's got a multi-class into everything. That's quite an eclectic character.
So what is that? You need straight 13s?
You need a minimum of straight 13s. Yeah, I mean, well,
I don't think anything requires con, right?
Nothing requires con, so you could dump your con, but I don't recommend that.
So I'm not sure what kind of advice you're looking for, because one of the things that the person that's going to multi-class in everything, it wouldn't bother me so much. It's like they're going to like have all the skills, but they're not going to have any like focus per se. It just depends on how many levels they'll probably end up with a lot of expertises. So they're going to be a very skill heavy character.
I mean, there's 12 classes, so you're not going to get into any of your archetypes for most of them. You know, and depending upon, you know, what you actually level up, your spellcasting is going to be practically pathetic, because you're going to have, you know, high level spell slots from all of these classes
but only first and second level spells.
First, maybe second, if you get high enough in your spellcastings. You're never going to wind up getting extra attack. It's highly unrecommended. And then as far as Infinity Stones and Venom, it sounds like you want to play a superhero game. That's a bit tough to do with D&D. So
there is a 5e superhero adaptation. I haven't looked at it yet. I don't know if it's out yet because it was a Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. Like there was like different genres.
Yes.
So the character itself, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I mean, especially if you're starting at first level and working your way up, you're going to kind of ease into it, and they may even change their mind. But I feel like they're probably going to start like on the bell curve, falling behind the rest of the party. They'll have a lot of options, but they're not going to be really good at particularly anything. But when you say like Infinity Stone, that's a red flag, because if you know all the Infinity Stones in and of themselves essentially would be artifacts, it's a lot of power creep into a game, especially if you're a new DM. And I've been down this road where, you know, you're like, oh, this is so cool, and then it's in your game and you have to deal with it, and it becomes way less cool. So you might want to like scale back the power or make it so they can't access the full power for a while. And hopefully like there's a good storyline that kind of like goes along with that kind of an artifact is an event, right? It's not a magic item you just kind of like hand out in your game. It's an event in your game. You know, they shape the course of history.
It is designed that in and of itself, it is going to be requiring a multi-session story arc by itself. You know, learning about it, finding about it, unlocking its powers, you know, taking it to places where it needs to be. You know, is this thing sentient in any way, shape, or form? And like I just said, 4 or 5 things, and each of those could, in and of itself, take part over multiple sessions. So, you know, artifacts are incredibly powerful. I know in my games, anything that's of artifact or, you know, legendary proportions, identify don't work. You need a minimum of legend lore, if not something even higher, to fully understand everything that an artifact, you know, has the capacity to do. Just because, like, you're talking about something, as you said, that has the ability to shape history. This thing has got power that could be put into anyone's hands, and in so doing, shapes the world.
Yeah, so as a new GM, like, staying away from that kind of stuff, I would recommend, you know, get a campaign under your belt first. before you do it. Otherwise, I just know you're going to run into some unexpected pitfalls, and choke points in the game. They're going to be really tough for you when you're like, oh, I don't know how to challenge my players anymore, or it's really easy for those kind of games to kind of turn into like a Monty Hall campaign, and these are things that kind of come with the territory of being a new DM. I feel like.
Oh, and then you have the other thing of, well, all right, you've got the Infinity Stone or the Infinity Gauntlet. What does the guy next to you have? Like, the party is now way incorrectly balanced, and in order for you to be threatened, it's going to annihilate the other players. So you've got those things that enter into dangerous territories. I can fix this. I'll give them an artifact too. And now you just see the
it just starts compounding.
Yeah. Now you need to have monsters that are like, oh, let me combine a god, a Tarask, and an ancient dragon with an archmage, and it gets action surge every round. Oh, okay, holy crap, lots of things. But I mean, that's what it takes to deal with a party all equipped with artifacts. Like,
yeah, so like the culmination of that campaign should be them getting that Infinity Stone, right? It shouldn't happen until much later into the game.
Look at Guardians of the Galaxy. That is an entire movie based around a single Infinity Stone, and the culmination of the movie is them acquiring it and hiding it, not keeping it. That's a great story arc that could easily be put in any D&D game.
Yeah, but players are terrible protagonists. They never hide the good stuff. They want to keep it for themselves.
I'll agree to that. I'm just saying, like, if you get to the culmination where, okay, you've gotten it, if you deliver the warnings from NPCs and from possibly yourself as well to the players, that the object of the game is to secrete this, away from, or secret away from the villain. You've got the ability to, like, okay, that's the end of the story. It's not about getting it and using it. It's getting it and, keeping it out of the bad guys' hands.
They're plot devices.
Yeah.
So, Ethan, my players just finished the 1 through 5 arc of fighting a giant Obelix. How long until the next giant, or how long before the next big bad arises? Should I let them sandbox? How long?
It's good to give them some time after you've got a big story. Figure out what kind of side quests and stuff that haven't been wrapped up. What kind of character goals that might be able to be tied together. Those are always things to keep the party together and the story moving forward, even if like your main arc is kind of like on hiatus. It's fun because that draws your players in, because they don't have to worry about what George is doing. It's like, oh, it's all about this.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add to that is it's never too soon to start foreshadowing.
No, that's
so you can always start adding the foreshadowing in that something's coming, something's happening. Even if it's just real subtle, so that they don't pick up on it when you do it. But as the pieces start kind of like falling into place, so like they have those aha moments.
right.
So that can kind of be cool.
So we have a question here from Eric. Says, how do you feel about curses and quest-based resolutions rather than allowing the remove curse spell? Does that cheapen the spell? All right, so while you're thinking,
You said quest versus remove this spell.
yeah. So like oh, I need to go do this thing. Oh, I need to go to the top of the mountain and bathe in this holy stream, rather than just someone waving their hand and remove curse.
I prefer that. Like, it's actually, when it becomes a part of the story, that's awesome. When they can just solve the problem by finding the NPC that can cast the spell or cast it themselves, far less interesting. I think it's more thematic. I think your players will be more vested in having to do the quest to break the curse. I also believe you shouldn't do that willy-nilly either.
All right.
Like that, you would want to do that maybe once a campaign, you wouldn't want them to have to be. You don't want to totally invalidate the spell. You're correct there, but at the same time, there can be greater curses that require more.
No one is going to remember the game where someone was forced to use a remove curse spell, but people are going to remember the game where after 3 sessions of play, we finally made it to the top of the mountain, and I was able to have my character bathe in this waterfall, and the inky blackness got washed away from my character, and not only did the curse get removed, but I got this thing, or I found this thing, or got this new power. Because if you're gonna give someone a penalty for a while, give them some kind of bonus to go with it. Afterwards.
Yeah, you definitely want to reward them for the trouble, for sure. So Jessica Haircode had asked how long have we been playing?
Well, I would say at this point in time, I'm looking at about 26 years. For me, give or take.
I was first introduced to the game when I was like 5. Then I only played a couple sessions, like a session of Red Box, and like a session or 2 of Gamma World. Then it wouldn't be for another like 7 years before I actually started really playing D&D, and so I was around 12. So it's over 30 years.
I gotta give a big thanks to Doug. He's like, here's a video for a take on Infinity Stones, and here's one for Venom.
Oh yeah.
So thanks, Doug.
Yeah, hopefully those will help you out and do stuff. So also too, like going back to that idea, that does make me think of if you're going to introduce like this idea of a character being venomized, it should be like a story event, right? It should be interesting, not just something that kind of just happens.
Right.
So I don't know for you, but for me, I remember when I first started running games, it was literally because the guy that kind of had really gotten us into it was like an older kid in the neighborhood, and he wanted to play a character. He wanted to run characters and not just be the dungeon master. So he started working on me and Chris Heckler, and starting to try and get us to run a game. And now it's so much easier because like before, like you didn't have all the choices. Like there was organized play, but it wasn't as widespread. For the area that we lived in.
You weren't dealing with a satanic panic.
We weren't dealing with a satanic panic. Well, I think that kind of helped more than it hurt. But you couldn't just go to your local game store and find a game to play and look for people because there weren't really local game stores.
Right.
B. Dalton books, Walden books. I don't think either of those exist anymore. Is where I would get my D&D books. Or sometimes there would be like a comic book store where I would go to find D&D books, but like now, like I feel like most people have areas, unless you're maybe in a rural area, it might be a little bit harder. But if you're in any kind of populations, there's tons of gaming stores that you can go to, and the online community is huge.
Absolutely. I know for me, a lot of my extra nerdiness, kind of came out through Scouts, Magic the Gathering, D&D, and it was the friendship that just kind of like grew and built from there. And 13, 14 years old, give or take, and it's like, oh well, sometimes we would play on camping trips, and other times it would just be like, it's the weekend and we're just gonna go hang out at a friend's house. And I don't remember a whole lot of my early stories. Other than taking my my bike and my backpack and biking over to Vince's house on a school afternoon, like I'm gonna go play D&D or Shadowrun or Star Wars, and back then didn't think anything of it. It's a couple miles away. I just bike on over.
One of the plus things about gaming then, I will say, is you never really worried about doing it wrong.
No.
That was never a consideration. Because, like, if you were doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong with all the same people, and then they were doing it wrong, too. So, who knew?
And it was, like, one of those things that, like, as you brought up, like, there's very few people who were interested in, taking the GM seat. So, whoever was willing to GM, you played whatever story they were interested in running, you know. And even back when I played, it was, for me, it was always homebrew. I was never playing, you know, the pre-written stuff. You know, I mean, that's just my entire background. I didn't get involved with doing anything, you know, modular until after, you know, I got involved with Nerdarchy.
So there was a question from Juxtaposed Stars. Can you suggest a few uncommon or less well-known early modules for new DMs?
That's based on what I just said. No,
we've pretty much done all homebrew, and we are this is definitely an area where Nerdarchy is not a good source for that kind of content. You've run a bunch of the RPG Crate stuff.
Yep.
Now for them,
you know, I actually happen to have, you know, some over here. You know, their stuff comes, you know, once a month. Each one happens to have a map attached to it. It's a good, you know, 4 to 6 hours, maybe 8 if you've got some heavy role playing. If you're gonna run everything in here, all of the encounters, and it's brand new stuff that's written every single month. You know, you can use Nerdarchy RPG Crate for 10% off your first month, should you so desire to go that. But he's got all the back months available up on the site, so if you want to buy a whole section of them so that you can just start running them. I know if you're not looking for full adventures, you know, there's plenty of, you know, one-shot encounters here and there, a whole bunch of stuff up on our website, you know, that you can use to, you know, boost stuff. But I mean, you could take a pre-written adventure, you know, take Tales of the Yawning Portal, make some major changes. All right, you don't have to change the mechanics. All right, it's not goblins, you know, it's kobolds. It's not, you know, oh, we're not running the Mines of Phandelver. We're running something else. Change the visuals, change the names, and you know, you'll be quite shocked that people are not going to have a clue that they're playing something that they've already done before.
Let's see. Tom Novak pointed out there's a bunch of free stuff on the DMs Guild that you can download as well. Taurus wants to know, hey everyone, quick question. How many players do you think is too much? We have
9.
around 7 players.
9. Don't run with 9 players.
No, 9 is too many.
Especially if one of them has got a you know, a toddler that's gonna run around the table.
Yeah. I think 4 to 6 is optimal.
That is definitely good. Online, I would say 4. This gives everyone a good chance for spotlight. At the table, you know, 5 to 6 gets, you know, a lot of coverage, and you get to have a lot more dynamic encounters. And I find that when I've done 4 players, challenges can easily be swung one way or the other too fast.
Yeah, it does become more swingy with 4, where if you have the 5th or 6th person, it kind of evens things out. Yeah. You don't feel that one person dropping as much.
No, and I enjoyed the game that I was running, but 9 players is exhausting, and I was constantly, you know, under the knife of, or under the microscope of, you know, am I going to be able to properly threaten, you know, how many people are actually going to show up tonight. If you've got regular players and they're going to show up every single week, you know, 7 begins to, you know, push the boundaries. If you're talking where there might be, you know, players not showing up, anything more than 6 winds up becoming dangerous.
So, one of the things I'm kind of wondering as we have this discussion, I wonder if anyone's writing adventures specifically for the first time dungeon master, or very new dungeon masters. Yeah, and it also brings to mind is like, well, how would I write that if I was going to do it?
Well, I mean, you'd want to be a little bit more meticulous, you know, with some of the things that you're putting in there. You know, I don't think Wizards is happy with you, you know, putting, you know, page references like, oh, go to Player's Handbook, page 17.
I think in the DM's Guild you could do pretty much anything.
Okay. But beyond that, I mean, that's what I would look at. I would definitely want to have more information and have it labeled as such, as like, okay, this is, things in the green box are for your information. Things in the blue box are your narratives that you read to your players. Things, in just a standard are there as normal, but not to be read to your players. Whatever. There could be a format that could be written and done that could definitely lead in that direction.
So someone had pointed out that, I think James Leslie had pointed out, over on the Limitless Adventure site, you can get the actual superhero rules, I guess the PDF, for like $6. So
yeah, they were, we've been friendly with Limitless Adventures for a while, but it was actually really cool to, meet and talk to them face to face at Gen Con.
Funny you should mention that. That's the video that went up yesterday with Andrew and you talking about kind of like world building and campaign building together.
Right.
And that's the other thing you can do as a GM too. Don't be afraid to, incorporate some of your players' ideas into the game and giving them some agency. Just have hard boundaries on things that they can and cannot do, for your own sanity.
I'm a big proponent of player agency, and giving players agency at times will tell you exactly what it is that they're looking for. And I was rather shocked to find that the times that I offered it out to my players, more often than not, I was getting role playing insertions as opposed to combat. So that made me happy, because I'm more interested in that tier. But we are at 2:47, and we do have something that I need to read off before we get out of here.
Oh yeah, let's do that, and then I'll get into Poison's question. And
all right, so we don't always read these kind of things that come to us.
I forgot about it, Ted. It's right in front of me the whole time.
Now, did this come in through Facebook, through email? Do you remember?
It was a Facebook message.
All right, so this is from Chris Hardy. This is my D&D group, and I always binge watch your newest vids every other week when we get together. Your videos have not only brought new ideas into our game, but taught us a lot about the game we didn't know or that we totally had wrong. So do us a favor and keep making amazing videos for as long as you can. Absolutely, and thank you for that. But he's got a small favor to ask. Well, in truth, he says it's a bit of a big one. He says, times are tight right now, and he can't really get his friends anything for Christmas. So he was wondering if we could please, during a video, give a shout out to his 3 best friends. Their names are Terrence Hud Hall, Trevin Beam, and Marshall Carpenter. Totally, throw that out there. You guys are awesome for watching our videos, week after week. Really appreciate it. He says, I know it's a lot to ask, but But if you could, I know it would really put a smile on their faces. If not, I understand, as this is a lot to ask of you guys. Anyways, I hope you all over there at Nerdarchy have an amazing Christmas and Happy New Year from your loyal fan in Nicholasville, Kentucky.
Yeah, it's no big deal. Unless we get a deluge of those requests. We're buried.
So, we do this, for the love of the hobby and, for the fans. So whenever we can do this kind of stuff, we'll absolutely do it. We'll try to we'll find the message from Chris. We can say that timestamp at 2:47 is when we did the shout out, and he and his friends can watch it on loop.
There you go. Watch it on loop. So Poison, is there a tool you guys recommend for appropriate scaling and setting of CR for specific party lineups?
A tool for scaling, isn't that crampons?
Maybe.
Sorry.
There's Cobalt Fight Club, but the real problem is that I find 5e to be more of an art than science when it comes to doing it. And I kind of just eyeball the party and the monster to figure out as will this monster one-shot the wizard, or, is my wizard just going to take out everything in the party in the first round? Unfortunately, I don't think the challenge system is great. And also, it depends on your playstyle, too. That completely changes it. If you do a lot of combats, I think the CR system probably works better. But if you only do a couple combats
Single.
Or a single, I think it starts to fall apart.
You know, I wholeheartedly agree. My solution, and sadly it does not work all the time, but waves. You know, find ways that more monsters have the ability to come in second round of combat, third round of combat. I try not to do more than 3 to 5 rounds of combat at a time if I can help it, because it tends to take too long if you've got too big of a group. But you know, that's my winning strategy is, you know, waves.
So Beholder Gaming, are you guys planning a Kickstarter anytime soon? If so, can you tease it?
We are. Tease.
Yeah. We are. It's pretty much written. It's been lightly edited, you know, through one time pretty much. Now it's like we have to gather maps and the art and figure out how to run a Kickstarter. Matt Mercer was really awesome and wrote a foreword for us, which we're greatly appreciative to. Mike Gould is one of the staff writers at Nerdarchy.com. He did a whole out-of-the-box series, and we're taking that series and we're turning it into a book where, hey, you just need encounters, or you can string them together as an adventure for the evening. You know, we're going to have you covered. The format that he did is fantastic. They came out really good. But now we want to put it into an actual book format and add the art and the maps. And we're going to be teaming up with Arknight. They do the flat plastic minis, so we're going to have the pawns for it and that style, as well as maps to put out. We're really just working through all the
nitty-gritty.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty of figuring out how to run it for the first time. And if you think it's intimidating to run your first D&D game, and I want to say it's nothing compared to the idea of running your first Kickstarter.
So we really wanted to have this, you know, already into people's hands. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's some times where, you know, one or more of us drop the ball, and things, you know, just kind of fell by the wayside, and we are definitely looking to get this launched
first
quarter of 2019, come heck or high water.
Even if it kills us.
You know, Dave and I both had a little sit down with Josh from Arknight at PAX Unplugged, which was you know, really cool to kind of hammer out some more details, and we're gonna get things moving. We're gonna get this to happen. And when it does, we're going to ask, you know, all of you loyal Nerdarchy fans to, you know, check it out, share it, you know, put it as many places as you possibly can, so that our first Kickstarter is a staggering success. And, you know, we can kind of take that cigar, put our feet up and say, yep, we're awesome.
Anyone want to see Ted smoking a cigar? Ted doesn't drink, smoke, or anything. That's kind of weird.
I have been privy to the passing of the cigar, you know, many years ago.
So we're getting ready to head out. Before we do, just want to let you know the after show is about to start. In order to watch the after show, you have to go over to Patreon and log in and be at the $3 level. And then the link will be there so that you can join the after show. It's going to take us like 10-15 minutes to set it up. And then maybe we'll wait a couple minutes to give you folks time to head over there. We're taking some Patreon-specific questions that were asked over in one of the Patreon posts, as well as whatever you guys want to throw at us over there. If you're a patron or you want to quick join the Patreon to jump in on that and we didn't get to your question, we will be able to take them over there. So that hangout will be as long as we need it to be. It could be 5 minutes. It could be an hour. We don't really know at this point.
This is only week 2, so we're trying to, you know,
we're feeling it out still.
Feeling it out, figuring it out. But you know, we want to do, you know, more for our awesome patrons that are out there. And this is an idea that, you know, Dave decided we should do it, and we're gonna. And
it's fun. We get to plug into you guys even more and hang out with you folks even more. So that's great. So with that, any final questions? We got like 5 minutes left that we can take. Ted, you ran your fan game last night, correct?
I did. You know, it was a little shorter than I had originally planned. You know,
TPK?
No, did not do a TPK. You know, I wanted to do slightly holiday theme, so I kind of mixed the upcoming New Year as a, you know, celebration of that with a dash of the winter theme. So I threw some, you know, evil snowmen at them, kind of reskinned gargoyle gave them vulnerability to fire, and took away their flying. It was a bit fun.
Nice. Did they roll?
No,
BB-8 style.
no. They like their legs kind of like smooshed together, so they were like more hunching. But then they stood up and walked, so that they were still.
The holiday adventure I ran had snowmen in it as well. You guys had skipped that part.
Yeah.
But I believe the snowmen knife you with their carrot noses.
Well, I didn't do that, but it was still.
The Fry Guy Games Orcus Claws was a pretty good adventure. Orcus Stole Christmas, and there was a lot of those snowmen. If you fought them, they like had the ability to kind of like snow teleport and stuff.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought so, but it totally got missed. So I wanted to say something, totally forgot. Sorry guys, I got this stupid cold. It's got my head all clogged and bogged down.
So Jamster XD says, "What is your favorite module that you've ran, played, and why?" Well, I'm gonna hope it's Forge of Fury that I will be starting January 10th. That's about the best I can say for a full module, because I've never played anything other than me running, the monthly RPG crate game, which will be next Friday.
I've never fully gone through an adventure. I don't believe. I mean, we've done like bits and pieces of Ravenloft and second edition, bits and pieces of Temple of Elemental Evil. I might have ran through most of the Hamlet adventure, but for the most part, like even my other groups, we always played homebrew stuff for one. And then it just seemed like whatever stuff we did do, we never seemed to make it all the way through.
Well, Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, he's been running Sunless Citadel. That wrapped up a week or two ago, and he's going to take those characters, and they're going to be moving into the Forge of Fury, and I'm going to be joining that cast for, I believe it's a 5th level game, and like I said, that's going to start January 10th. It'll be 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. I understand that we're going up against, the might that is Critical Role, because it is a Thursday evening.
What time does the game start?
8:30.
8:30?
So you got about an hour and a half, roughly, before Critical Role starts. But, I will be, as they appear on, Jake's YouTube channel, I will be putting that under the gameplays since I'm in it. I figured, we share the Saber Dice. I'll share that one too. So if you want to follow along with those games and see how, my antics messes up whatever's going on with their antics, we'll see.
See how the antics mesh.
I got some fun things that I've got planned, because this is the first time I'm ever entering into a story that's already going, and I've got the ability to know literally everything that's happened.
What level character are you starting at?
5th.
At 5th level? Yeah. And you're actually using a character build that we did on the channel.
I am. I am doing a Dwarven Barbarian who's going to go Paladin, and based off of the slight twisted story that I have, like twisted meaning slight derivations from what we talked about in the video, he might eventually take a level of cleric and not just go all dwarf, all barbarian paladin.
Right. So
Forge cleric's pretty cool.
Forge cleric is pretty cool. So on the channel you can find the Path of the Justicar Barbarian, which is kind of what we modeled that build off of this character. So with that, we're about to go into the after show. So head over to Patreon and log in, and just keep heads up, because we'll be putting that post in there, so you'll be able to click the link there and join us for the Nerdarchy after show. So until next time, stay nerdy.